Hey you. Today we're going to once again talk about the Netflix series You, but this time we're doing something a little different. As we all know, Joe has various love interests and they change each season. Some are liked more than others, some aren't liked at all, and some fans just don't know what to think. And I think Marianne falls under that last box right there. But it is no secret that Marianne has got to be the most lackluster of them all. In this video I'm going to go over why that is, how they could have handled things better, and what they were trying to go for with Marianne. First, I want to get my thoughts on Marianne out of the way, so that you can all have an idea of where I stand with it. Then you can hold that against me by calling out my bias, if any. So I guess I'll start with the most basic, predictable question, and that's, do I like Marianne? My answer is, I don't think so. I'm leaning toward no, but at the same time, the same thing that happened with Love happened with her. She was tolerable her first season, and then the next season they flesh her out more, but it's done in a way that just makes me lose respect for her. However, I do want to say that this happened for completely different reasons between Love and Marianne. The reason why I don't like her is because she's a driving force of social commentary. I'm sure we all watch a show to connect with the story and its characters, not to make sure things are represented a certain way. And there's currently a crisis in film and TV right now where the only things that are really booming are sequels and reboots. Because back when the original stories were told, storytelling wasn't just time allotted to programming how people view the world. And we're all becoming so aware of it that whenever a show or movie has social commentary, that it feels like an interruption. Marianne brings to the show conversations like missing white woman syndrome to further perpetuate the idea that if you're white, you're glorified, but if you're black, you're a neglected potential suspect. I just don't find it productive, and it definitely doesn't help anyone out. All it really did was give Joe another moment to expose himself as the kind of guy who will agree and blend in with any such idea to appease women. Like when Love asked Marianne if Joe effortlessly understood everything about her. So that's the main thing I don't like, and it parlays into the next thing, which is that she holds things against people based on their profile. She sees Joe as a rich, white, privileged male, and it's because of that that they don't get along very well the first time around. And she's so prideful in her stance that when Joe rushes in her direction or fear that Ryan is hurting her, that instead of understanding his concerns, she chews his ear off for trying to be protective and not letting her have independence in the situation. Sounds like toxic femininity, if you ask me. And that's just season 3. In season 4, her entire gimmick is the one that got away, the one Joe couldn't keep down. There's a video of Marianne's actress, Tati Gabriel, explaining basically the center of the intention behind the character by this point.
Like, why was it important to you how your character was being portrayed?
So obviously, whatever character I play, like I'm a mixed race black woman, so which means any character I play is going to be black. And it was just important. The first conversation I had with my showrunner, I was like, so as a black woman, like, are you going to be true to the traits that I feel all black people exude? I understand certain things need to happen in order to make this, help the story move along, but if I don't want her to be oblivious, because we as black people, like, I do not feel that we're ever oblivious. It's in that generational trauma, what's in our genes to always be aware. The survival instinct that we have is just unmatched in some ways. So I wanted to make sure all of those things were honored in the portrayal of Marianne, as well as, like, even if she was going to be, the fact that she was a recovering addict, I didn't want it to be like troped or try to make her seem like she was less than.
Right.
And I really appreciated the way Sarah Gamble, our showrunner, she was like, no, she heard me. She was like, absolutely. Anything, like, if anything feels weird, like, please tell me. We had last season that you see a bit more get played out this season. We had an episode called Missing White Woman Syndrome. When a white woman goes missing, everybody goes searching. When a woman of color goes missing, it goes quiet. I just wanted to, I was like, I'm here for this story, but for those who do find connection with Marianne, whether it be her as a mother, like her as a recovering addict, her as an artist. Like, I want them to feel the most, just the most truthful sense of that, and not feel that their story is being taken advantage of or taken for granted. So, yeah.
Utilizing that platform.
That very much.
And I feel like ultimately it comes off as disingenuous to have a character be portrayed this way. It's like, why didn't they do this for Beck? Why didn't they do this for Love or even Candace? Those are very well fleshed out characters. The writing for Beck is phenomenal. Same for Love. So much to the point where they're almost just as polarizing as Joe. So now when I think of Marienne, I think of a social justice warrior that will always get their way in the end, even if it comes out as insignificant with the plot armor and capabilities of the main character, because so be it. So those are my qualms with the Marianne character, and I feel like an exception on that one. So the real question is, why does the general fan base not like Marianne? From what I've seen, here are the main three reasons. 1, the character is dull, boring, and uninteresting. 2, she's inconsistent. She hates Joe, but then finds out he's not rich, grew up in the system like she did, then falls for him. 3, Marianne seems to have a superiority complex, constantly puts others down while also caring excessively about how others respond to her. And I think that these are all valid reasons. Marianne's actual development as a love interest to Joe didn't start until halfway through the season. With Candace, we didn't learn the whole story until season 2, but we didn't know enough by then, so we didn't miss out on anything with how much of that season she was actually in. As a result, it don't really give us too much to actually feel with for Marianne. Another thing that doesn't quite make sense is that we're supposed to allegedly be able to empathize with the love interest who could turn out to be a victim, since Joe is the lover, more than we empathize with Joe. So introducing us to a character who doesn't really respect Joe until she can see herself in him isn't a good way for the character to have our respect. So what's with that, writers and showrunners? Why did you make Marianne out as this at first when you wanted her to be a love interest? And again, half of a season is not enough for us to see in her what we saw in Beck and Love, especially if they start out as a character we don't have full tolerance for. And now for the golden question of what they were trying to accomplish. Why did Marianne miss the mark? Sometimes I feel like the only person who knew what they were trying to do with Marianne, and now that's actually happening again with Kate, which I might make a separate video about, I guess this could mean that the show hasn't been as excellent at introducing love interest since Love and Delilah. Speaking of whom, Love was supposed to be Joe's supposed match. Keyword supposed. But then as we learn in season 3, they're not matches, because they approached their colors very differently. Joe is more mindful and calculating, whereas Love is emotional and impulsive, and it leads to making them completely different kinds of decisions that just show why they're ultimately not actually compatible like they seem to be in season 2. And with Marianne, she was supposed to be Joel's actual match, but in a more healthy way. They were bold, coming out of horrendous situations with their most recent partners, and even had almost identical backgrounds of growing up in the system, without any form of privilege that saved them. This is why she was ultimately better in Love, because Joe doesn't need someone who enables him and tells him that his darker colors are okay. Sure, he needs someone who at least knows it about him, but more importantly, he needs someone who can relate to him more naturally and pushes him to be better, which gives us the best of both worlds in Kate. But I don't think they fleshed out that when it comes to Marianne. They made it more about Joe having an affair and his difficulties when it comes to not being obsessed with someone. So Marianne was more bland and more of a love interest at a surface level than a character of her own like Love and Beck were. Such a shame too, because this is a character that went on to play a unique part in the following season and even gets to live in the end, yet I still don't feel like she's been done justice fully. As for how they could have avoided this, obviously Marianne needed better execution. Now, season 3 did have a lot going on, so there was a cap to how far they could have excelled with this character. Yes, of course, that was the case, because we all know that some things can only be so good, and then if you insist on making some elements be the thing, The other things can only work so well, like a restriction. But that's no excuse in this case. Marienne was lackluster to a degree. They touched enough bases, but definitely not all of them. So here's how they could have executed Marienne better. First thing that comes to mind is that they could have had some sort of build-up starting from the very first episode, from the first time Joe meets Marienne and Dante. Perhaps Marianne could have had a crush on Joe, found him attractive for being a loving father to Henry, while taking a rough exit from a relationship with a man who is being a terrible father by weaponizing her child. This on its own eliminates two problems. One, it gets rid of that bad first impression that we get of Marianne being the disrespectful, prejudiced librarian. Instead, it makes her more like the actual love interest, librarian from Book 3, Mary Kay. Two, it makes the duo between the two not something that just suddenly happens. That was also part of what made that such a turn-off. It came out of nowhere for Joe to suddenly be interested in someone else. Sure, he had a moment with Natalie and backed out, though it wasn't enough to save her life, but he spent the rest of the time since then not having his eye on someone else. I also think that this naturally would have given her more personality and taken away from the dullness. Beck and Love's personality showed a lot when they were expressing an interest in Joe. To Beck, it was a game, something she didn't take too seriously until towards the end. And to Love, it was pure passion. The consequence of this is that it would diminish Joe being more unlikable thanks to Season 3, because instead of jumping into it with someone else, he falls into long-way temptation that more viewers would have been able to understand. I don't know how important it is to everyone that Joe is more and more unlikable as the show continues, but I have heard that this makes it better for when it comes time for the show to end, because by that point he'll be more deserving of his fate, whatever it may be. Anywho, what we got is what we got, so I'm not going to dwell too much on what could have been. Instead, we could talk about what can they do with Marianne going forward to make things much better, and to give what we've gotten of her in the past more appreciable. Naturally, I would say concentrate less on the things that made her unlikable in the first place. Instead of toning it down for Season 4, I feel like they actually amplified it a little, especially when pairing her up with Nadia. And please don't use her as a vessel to take down Joe. Penn Badgley has been vocal about this possibility being a good way to end the show, and that's where I have to disagree. It's just not necessary. Giving all the power, even a conclusion, to a character that was introduced like this for this purpose would again be disingenuous. Now, is bringing Marianne back at all necessary? No, I think the point in the way it ended is that it's best if Joe thinks that she's dead, so unless Joe is finally being prosecuted, coming back out of the shadows to waste the risk of being killed again would just be redundant. She's already explained to Nadia that she can't do very much without him catching on and then getting away with it. Overall, I think Marianne needs to be someone we can feel for and show compassion for at the same time. Like if young Joe grew up to actually turn out to be more like her. Joe minus the darker colors. Kate minus the controversies, a genuine victim and down-to-earth person. And I think they gave us about half of that in Season 4. We feel for her because the show did a great job of stressing out how much of a victim she is. But besides being a caring mother and wanting to pursue her passions and dreams, which does give us that down-to-earth element, I feel like it was done so much in an attempt to gloss over just how disliked she was in Season 3. So perhaps if they decide to bring her back for Season 5, they can continue stressing out why we like her and why we should care about her besides because of what Joe has done to her. Thank you all for watching this video. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section down below and tune in for more. I'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.